Hello all, welcome back to Current Affairs Settler series. I'm Guna Mathivanan from Officers IAS Academy. Friends, I'm coming up with an exclusive current affairs program targeting 2024 Prelims as well as Mains. So it will be an online program. The classes will be on every Saturday at 5 p.m. I have given the information here. You can go through if you're interested. For more information, you can call to the number given there. So today's topic, U.S Federal Reserve rate hike. Friends, like how we have central bank in India, we have RBI in India. Similarly, we have a central bank in USA that is called as Federal Reserve. That is called as Federal Reserve, America's RBI. Okay. Now, this Federal Reserve, they will lend to American banks, like how RBI lends to SBI, to IOB, like that Federal Reserve also will lend to American banks. So let's take Bank of America. Let's take Bank of America just for example. Now Federal Reserve is lending at a rate of 2%. Assume they are lending at a rate of 2%. And this Bank of America will borrow money from Federal Reserve and they will lend to their customers. They will lend to American citizens, let us say at 5%. So this Bank of America is borrowing money from Federal Reserve for 2% and they lend for 5% to Americans. Likewise, if Bank of America is depositing money in Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve is giving, let us say, a 1.5% of interest. Likewise, if someone is depositing money in Bank of America, assume that someone is getting some 2% interest. So very simple. Bank of America will borrow at 2% from Federal Reserve and they will lend for 5%. So if someone, John from USA, if he is borrowing from America, it will be given for 5%. If John is depositing his money in Bank of America, he will be given 2% interest. Very simple. Now, parallelly, we will take India. Let's take RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Now, Reserve Bank of India, they will also lend to they will also lend to Indian banks. So let us take State Bank of India. Let us take State Bank of India. So Reserve Bank of India, assume that they are lending for 5%. Reserve Bank of India is lending for 5%. Now State Bank of India will borrow money and they are lending it. And they are lending it for, let us say, 8% or 9%, let's say 9%. They are lending it for 9%. So SBI, what it does, it borrows from RBI and they lend for a higher interest rate. Similarly, if someone is depositing, if Guna, let's say Guna is borrowing money from SBI, 9% interest. If Guna is depositing money in SBI, let us say Guna is getting some 6% interest, or Guna is getting some 7%. See, we put money in State Bank, we get a FD, okay? We get a FD of 7%, let's assume. So I have taken two examples. American Central Bank, they are lending it for 2% to Bank of America, and Bank of America borrows for 2%, they sell it for 5%. Similarly, I took the case of India. RBI is lending money for 5%. State Bank of India, they borrow for 5% and they lend it for 9% to borrowers. Right? Similarly, if Guna wants to deposit money in SBI, for the deposit of Guna, I want to put my 1 lakh rupees in fixed deposit, assume SBI is giving me 7%. This is a normal scenario. Here, John thinks. What John does, he is looking at the interest rate. John is looking at the borrowing interest rate in America. Borrowing interest rate is 5%. John is borrowing at 5% and he is bringing that money, and if he is depositing that in State Bank of India, how much interest he will be getting? John is borrowing for 5% in America and he is depositing that money in India, in State Bank of India for 7%. He is borrowing for 5%, he is depositing for 7%, so he makes a profit of 2%. He does no job. He goes to Bank of America, borrows for 5%. And he comes to India, he deposits that money in SBI and he gets 7%. What is the profit? 2%. This is called as interest rate differential. This is called as interest rate differential. Okay, what is the advantage? Now you please don't think that why in America interest rate is low, why in India interest rate is high. Please don't think that. Try to understand the example given here. Okay, India is a developing country. We have more scope, right? So here the interest rates will be different. In America, usually the interest rates will be low. Okay, so since the interest rate differential is favorable for John, he brings lot of money from America and deposits in India. What is the advantage? We see a lot of inflow of dollars from America. Lot of dollars comes to India. But now, if the Federal Reserve increases their rate. So here, let's say instead of 2%, the America Central Bank, instead of 2%, if they decide to lend for 5%, if they decide to lend for 5%, if they are lending it for 5%, then Bank of America will lend for 8%. If Bank of America is lending for 8%, what will happen? If John is going to borrow that money for 8%, and if he is depositing in State Bank of India for 7%, he cannot make profit. The interest rate differential will not be favorable. So if the Central Bank of America, when they increase their lending rates, then John from America will not borrow and he will not choose India to invest. So what is the impact? When America's Federal Reserve, when they increase their interest rates, when the U.S. Federal Reserve, when they decide to increase their interest rate, when they decide to increase their repo rate, when U.S. Federal Reserve, when they increase their repo rate, what happens? The Bank of America's lending rate will be very high. When the lending rate is very high, so John, previously, the lending rate was very low. So he borrowed money for a lower interest and he was depositing money in India for a higher interest. But now what happened? Since the Bank of America's interest has increased, so even if John borrows and he deposits in SBI, he cannot make profit. He will face loss. So what is the consequence? The consequence is the capital inflow into our country will reduce. The number of the dollars coming inside India will reduce. And not just that, those people who have invested in India previously they would have invested, right? Forget about John. Now let us take, let's say, Bill Gates. Previously, Bill Gates, when the interest rate differential was favorable to Bill Gates, he would have deposited in India. Now, looking at the change in interest rates, he can also withdraw the money. He can withdraw the money because he will not get a profit. He can withdraw the money, he will go back to America. So, the capital inflow will reduce and also the capital outflow from India will increase. The capital outflow from India will increase. The capital inflow decreases. The capital outflow increases. So what happens? Ultimately, dollar coming inside decreases and dollar from India will be going outside. Ultimately, our forex reserve will come down. Our foreign exchange reserve will be coming down. When our forex reserves comes down, then that is going to have an impact on balance of payments. That will have an impact on balance of payments, right? What is balance of payments? We will discuss in some other video. Most of you by this time will be knowing about balance of payments. I will make a separate video on balance of payments, right? In simple terms about balance of payments. If I buy something from other countries, I have to pay in foreign currency. I want to buy petrol from Saudi Arabia. I want to buy iPhones from America. I have to pay in terms of dollars. That payment will be affected. Because why? Our forex reserve will come down. So what is the impact of federal rate hike? When Federal Reserve increases the interest rates, then the capital inflow to India will come down. The capital outflow from India will increase. Ultimately, it will put pressure on our forex reserve. Our balance of payments will be affected. Our rupee will be depreciated. And you know the consequence. What all can happen, right? So now you may ask, sir, okay, what if State Bank of India is going to change the deposit rates from 7%? If State Bank of India, if it makes it 10%, then John will continue to come and deposit in State Bank of India. But that is going to put more pressure on the State Bank. It is not going to be an easy thing, for which our RBI has to change the interest rates. RBI has to change, then State Bank has to change. It comes up with a lot of complexities. It is not easy. It is not going to be easy. So this is a challenging situation. So why we are discussing this topic? So recently, Federal Reserve has increased their lending rate. Now Federal Reserve's lending rate is not even 5%. They have increased it to 5.5%. When Federal Reserve has increased it to 5.5, imagine what would be the interest rate of Bank of America, because Bank of America, they will borrow for 5.5 and they will lend for a higher percentage. This is the highest since 2001. This is the highest interest rate of US Federal Reserves. Alright, I hope you got some clarity. I have given a very simple explanation about this impact of Federal Reserve rate hike. So here I have given the content. You can go through, you can pause the video, you can make some small notes out of it. Impact I have given. Right. So what is the consequence? I have explained. So you can go through. So yes, I have given a multiple choice question. Find the right answer and give it in the comment section. I hope the video was useful. So tomorrow I will meet you with another important hit list topic. Till then, bye. Take care.